I have a question. What exactly is Rainbow High? And I know that sounds like a really stupid question. I mean, obviously, we know what it is. It's a doll brand. But really think about it. When I say Monster High, you probably immediately know what Monster High is. It's monsters that go to high school, it's fashion, it's horror references, it's friendship, it's being different, accepting your flaws, all wrapped up in this campy high school universe. And when I say Bratz, you know exactly what Bratz is. It's the fashion, the attitude, Y2K, big shoes, big heads, bigger personalities. Now, Barbie, she's Barbie. She can literally be anything, and somehow that's the entire point. But what is Rainbow High? What is the thing that makes Rainbow High Rainbow High? Is it the rainbow itself? The characters? The school? Is it the fashion, creativity, slime, and magical pets? I hope not the slime. Like, because somehow in only a few years, Rainbow High has been all of those things. And I think that's actually the biggest problem that the brand has. There has already been plenty of videos talking about the downfall of Rainbow High, and people have talked about the loss of articulation, the second outfits disappearing, the slime, the reboot, and I agree that all of those things are really important factors to the downfall of Rainbow High. And I also believe that there's an even bigger problem. Because I don't think that Rainbow High failed because the dolls simply got worse or anything. I think Rainbow High just simply forgot why people loved the brand in the first place. And somehow one of the biggest fashion doll brands of the early 2020s ended up having a complete identity crisis. So let's talk about it. Rainbow High officially launched in 2020, and on paper, the concept was incredibly simple. Rainbow High was a prestigious creative arts and fashion school. Every character represented a different color, and every student had their own creative focus. For example, there was fashion, music, cosmetology, animation, performing arts, and so on. And that was the fantasy of Rainbow High. You weren't just buying a pretty red doll or a pretty yellow doll. You were buying this fantasy of being this incredibly stylish teenager attending this amazingly glamorous creative school. Basically, it was an art school that had unlimited funding and every student dressed like they were going to Paris Fashion Week. That was Rainbow High. And I think that was really smart. Monster High had, the monsters. Barbie had careers and endless possibilities. Bratz had the attitude and the fashion. But Rainbow High built this whole world around creativity itself. Even MGA still describes Rainbow High as a colorful fashion school built around bold fashion and self expression. And the dolls actually reflected that. Early Rainbow High dolls felt almost ridiculously detailed compared to what we're used to getting from usual Playline fashion dolls. I mean, the insert eyes, rooted eyelashes, long hair, articulation, doll stands, detailed shoes, layered outfits that were actually layered and not just pieces stitched together. And most importantly, the second outfits. Like, oh my god. Can we please bring back the era where companies actually believe that dolls could have more than just one shirt? Like, oh my gosh. Because Rainbow High would give you an entire second outfit, not just an extra skirt, not just a new pair of shoes. I'm talking about a full outfit. And because the characters were supposed to be students at this creative school, all of that fashion just made sense. The clothing wasn't just decoration. Fashion was part of the world. And I think that's where Rainbow High actually discovered its real identity. But one thing that I definitely should mention is the realism of Rainbow High. Yes, there were some fantasy elements and really unrealistic things, but there were some things that were actually pretty modern. Like how Bella Parker was expelled. That really caught me off guard when that happened. And I was waiting for the next episodes for her to return, and then she just didn't. She was gone for like a little while. And that really shocked me. I was like, wait, like, why is that realistic to real life? And of course, Rainbow High was also loved for the overall nostalgic feeling that it gave. A lot of people in the Rainbow High fandom says that it reminded them of Monster High and Ever After High. So many other different shows that they watched as a kid that actually had good plots, good fashion, and made you want to go out and buy the dolls. And here's where I think Rainbow High becomes really interesting, because I don't think people mostly fell in love with the story, I think people fell in love with Rainbow High because of the dolls themselves. I mean, obviously, the show had a huge audience. The first 4 seasons generated around 1.3 billion minutes watched on YouTube. So, I'm definitely not saying that nobody cared about the characters. Absolutely not. People absolutely had their favorites, including me. People loved Sunny, Bella, Jade, Poppy, Violet, Amaya, and many more. But think about the way people collected Rainbow High. You could know absolutely nothing about a character and still see her on the shelf and go, oh my gosh, I need this doll. You did not need to know their backstories. You didn't even need to know what their favorite food or who they were dating. All you knew was that they had colorful hair and a gorgeous outfit. And honestly, that's not a bad thing at all. Rainbow High was a fashion doll brand. The dolls themselves should be able to sell well. But I think that eventually created a bigger problem. Because if the doll is the main reason people are emotionally attached to your brand, then what happens when you change the dolls a little too much? Okay, now I know this video has absolutely nothing to do with Monster High, and I'm gonna take every chance I can get just to yap about this franchise, but I think that Monster High is probably the easiest comparison, okay? Because Monster High has changed a lot. We've had Generation 1, Generation 2, and now Generation 3. Different animation styles, different body types, different personalities, different lore, different relationships, different designs, different. And people have argued about basically every single change. But through all of that, people still care about these characters. Draculaura is still Draculaura, Frankie is still Frankie, Claudine is still Claudine. You could stop producing Monster High dolls tomorrow and people would still draw these characters, cosplay them, write about them, make videos about them, aka me, that would be me. They could argue about them because Monster High built an emotional connection between the audience and the characters. Rainbow High's relationship with collectors feels very different. Of course, the characters matter, but I think the physical dolls themselves carry much more of the brand's identity. So when Rainbow High started changing the physical product, there wasn't as much protecting it from that change. And that's why I think Rainbow High's greatest strength eventually became its greatest weakness. The dolls were Rainbow High. Okay, this is gonna sound really funny and maybe weird to some people. There's something else that people don't talk about enough. Rainbow High basically trained us to be spoiled. Hear me out. When you repeatedly give customers detailed clothing, articulation, accessories, stands, and just overall beautiful presentation, that becomes normal. I mean, that becomes the standard for the brand. And Rainbow High was successful. Rainbow High had become globally successful in the doll industry in 2023. And that is crazy considering that the brand had only launched in 2020. So clearly something was working, but there's a downside to setting the bar that high. Because once you teach your audience, this is what a $25 Rainbow High doll looks like, you easily cannot just take a step backwards. If you've been giving me 2 outfits and now you're giving me 1, yeah, I'm gonna notice that. If you've been giving me articulation and now there's less, yeah, I'm definitely gonna notice that too. And if you have established incredibly detailed fashion and amazing outfits, but now the outfits have become more dull and just simple, yeah, I'm gonna notice that. It doesn't necessarily mean that the newer dolls are objectively terrible, absolutely not. But the problem is, I've seen what MGA can do, I've seen what Rainbow High can do. Rainbow High was competing against its own past, and that is incredibly difficult competition to win. Oh yes, Rainbow World, yay! I'm sorry. If you like Rainbow World, that's completely okay. But just speaking, personally, I'm not the biggest fan. But anyways, this is where I think the identity crisis became impossible to ignore. In 2024, MGA introduced Rainbow World, and suddenly we have slime, magical pets, and crystal thingies. We have this magical fantasy world, and Rainbow High started feeling like a completely different brand. But here's something important. I don't think MGA randomly lost their minds. Absolutely not. The company was pretty open about what it was doing. When Rainbow World launched, MGA specifically described the sparkling slime play pattern as something designed to appeal to Rainbow High's younger fan base and add more play value. And actually, that makes a lot of sense, and I get that. These are children's toys. Children like slime, children like pets, children like magic, children like bright colors. So I don't think the conversation should be, how dare this children's toy appeal to children? Because, girl, come on, but the more interesting question is, why did appealing to children require Rainbow High to change its original fantasy? because Rainbow High was already a children's brand. The fashion was the fantasy. Being a creative student surrounded by these ridiculously stylish friends was the play pattern. You can make outfits, style their hair, pretend they were designing clothes, make them perform, have school drama, have friendships, and suddenly Rainbow High needed magic and slime and pets. And that's where I think MJ started solving a problem that Rainbow High didn't necessarily have. One thing that I will mention though is that Bratz was coming back around this time, so it makes sense that MGA wanted to put more of their funds into Bratz because Bratz has had a huge fan base since it, first came out. And most of the Bratz fans are adults, so it makes sense that they would want to put more detailed designs or just more thought out designs in general into Bratz. And because Rainbow High was this colorful fashion school that was based off the rainbow, that is something that could easily be marketed towards children. So of course it makes sense that they were like, you know what? Forget about making Rainbow High appeal to both collectors and children. Let's switch it up and make Rainbow High the kids brand, and then we could just focus on making Bratz the adult brand. This is probably my biggest issue with Rainbow World. Full beef, all beef to Rainbow World. Me and Rainbow World will never be friends. I'm sorry. Listen, Rainbow High's original concept actually gave it a very specific position in the doll aisle. If I wanted monsters, I'm gonna go to Monster High. If I wanted classic fashion doll fantasy, I'm going to Barbie. Now, if I wanted 2000s Y2K attitude, I'm going to Bratz. But if I wanted this colorful, glamorous, creative school that was a fantasy like Rainbow High, yeah, I'm gonna go to that. But once you introduced magical worlds and magical pets, now you've entered a space that is already packed. I mean, fashion dolls are everywhere. Magic is everywhere. Sparkles are everywhere. Cute pets are everywhere. Rainbow High did not need to make itself more unique because it already was unique. It already had something. And I think that's what makes this whole situation really ironic. In trying to expand Rainbow High's world, MGA made Rainbow High feel less unique because the original concept wasn't complicated. In fact, that's the reason why so many people connected with it. It was basically, hey, what if art school was the most glamorous place on earth? That's fun. And somewhere along the way, I guess that wasn't enough anymore. Honestly, I think things are a bit more complicated though, because I don't think Rainbow High's story is simply, MGA made bad decisions and destroyed a perfect doll brand. I mean, I actually wonder if Rainbow High became a victim of its own success. When Rainbow High arrived in 2020, the doll aisle looked completely different. But then, competition got stronger. Monster High came back. Barbie was trying to do her best. And suddenly, collectors had more options, which makes me wonder, did Rainbow High actually help raise expectations for everybody else? Because after you've seen a playline doll with inset eyes, rooted eyelashes, detailed fashions, and articulation, it's hard not to expect more. And I'm not saying Rainbow High forced Mattel to make better dolls. Ugh. Like, if anything, I feel like Mattel felt like they had to keep up. But I do think Rainbow High helped prove that there was an audience hungry for detailed fashion dolls. MJ itself was calling Rainbow High a major force in the fashion doll category within only a couple years of launch. And maybe that's the irony. Rainbow High helped create a doll aisle where collectors expected more. And then Rainbow High itself started offering less of what those collectors originally valued. Okay, let me be fair. Let me be fair for once. No, I'm joking. Collectors are terrible about nostalgia. Okay, let me not say terrible, that's me exaggerating. But us collectors, yes, me, including myself, we love saying, it used to be better. Monster High collectors do it, Barbie collectors do it, Bratz collectors do it, and Rainbow High collectors definitely do it. And sometimes, a lot of the times, we're right. But sometimes we remember the best dolls from an era, and of course we're gonna most likely forget the mediocre ones from that era. So I don't want this video to turn into old Rainbow High was perfect, new Rainbow High evil, because honestly, that's boring and it's not really true. Rainbow High still has cute dolls, like a lot of them. There were still kids discovering the brand, and there were still collectors buying newer releases. There were still people restyling them, photographing them, and making customs. Even in 2026, the collector community is still actively sharing restyles and fashion challenges. So Rainbow High didn't disappear, which actually makes this whole situation more interesting because Rainbow High actually survived. It just became something different. And now we get to 2026. This is why I don't really want to call Rainbow High a dead brand because the story is still happening. Collectors are still discussing new releases, newer lines like Pretty in Paris are still getting attention, although reactions show that some collectors continue comparing their fabrics, articulation, and presentation with older Rainbow High dolls, which is fair because even years later, Rainbow High is still being haunted by Rainbow High. Every new doll, I mean, every single new doll that comes out has to compete with somebody's memory of Series 3. And by somebody, I mean me. Or they have to compete with Shadow High or Rainbow Vision or whatever era they personally think was peak Rainbow High. And maybe that's why MJ has to figure out now not how do we make Rainbow High exactly like 2021 again, but what are the things Rainbow High can never lose without stopping being Rainbow High? Because every successful doll brand has those things. Monster High can redesign Draculaura, but she still needs to feel like Draculaura. She still needs to be that vampy cute girl. Bratz can modernize, but those dolls better still have the attitude. You know, Barbie can change constantly, which she has, but the idea of possibility is always somewhere underneath. So, what is Rainbow High's version of that? I think it's three things: fashion, creativity, and color. That's Rainbow High. Not slime, not articulation, not even second outfits. Those things can enhance Rainbow High, of course, but the brand's identity should be this: ridiculously colorful celebration of fashion and creativity, and of course, art. And when Rainbow High moves too far away from that, it starts looking like something else wearing Rainbow High's name. People often ask, what was it that killed Rainbow High? But, I mean, nothing really did. Rainbow High is still here. The dolls still exist, people still collect them, people still care. I think the better question is, when did Rainbow High stop feeling like Rainbow High? Because that is what people are mourning. Not necessarily articulation, not necessarily a second outfit, not even Shadow High. They're mourning a feeling. That moment when you walked into the doll aisle and Rainbow High looked almost as glamorous compared to everything around it. That feeling when a new character leaked and everybody was trying to figure out what this doll was supposed to represent, whether it was photography or journaling or art or fashion. Seeing Shadow High for the first time and thinking, wait, they can do that? They can just go from bright and colorful to making this sister brand that is just dark and moody? Rainbow High felt experimental, it felt excessive, it felt creative, and most importantly, it felt confident, which is kind of ironic because MJ has always talked about Rainbow High as a brand, about confidence and self-expression. Maybe the biggest thing Rainbow High needs now is some of that confidence back. So I'll ask the question again, what is Rainbow High? Because I think MJ needs to figure that out before anything else. Not what gimmicks the kids are into right now, not what other doll brands are doing, not how to recreate 2021, just what makes Rainbow High Rainbow High. But Rainbow High is still young, it's only been around since 2020. Maybe this isn't the death of Rainbow High. Maybe this is just an awkward phase where the brand is trying to figure out what it wants to become. And I don't want MGA to be like, it's not a phase, mom. Because if it's not a phase, I'm gonna be real mad. I'm joking. Honestly, I hope that they figure it out. Because peak Rainbow High has showed us what this brand was capable of. And I don't think collectors necessarily need Rainbow High to go backwards. We just need Rainbow High to remember why we cared about it in the first place. But of course, since I love reading you guys' comments and I basically respond to every single comment, I want to know what you think. What is one thing Rainbow High could never get rid of without losing its identity? Is it the fashion, the articulation, the school, the characters, the detailed clothing? Is it Shadow High? Or do you actually prefer the newer direction? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe because I always talk about dolls, doll collecting, Monster High, Rainbow High, and basically whatever drama is happening in the doll aisle this week. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!